All right, so guys, hey there, and welcome to No Small Life, where we help you rebuild a life you love no matter what you've walked through.
We like to say your life is not small and you don't have to live it that way any longer. We are Chris and Megan Ria, and we are excited to talk about how to rebuild your future despite your past.
That's right.
How to rebuild the future despite your past.
That's right. So the entire month of March, we're focusing on our practical life, the daily things that you can do to rebuild a future you love. And we say this often, but it's true. There are so many things outside of our control, right? But so often what happens is we dig our heels in on those things that we don't have control over, and we try to control everything else instead of what we actually can control.
That's right.
And when we try to control what we can't, that is just the quickest way to frustration and exhaustion. And I know that we are not alone in saying that. We've all kind of felt that over the last couple of years. However, there's a lot of things that are within our control, right?
Yeah.
That most of the time, if we're honest, we're so exhausted from trying to control the things that we can't control that we neglect these things that we actually can control. We just don't have the energy because we're overly consumed with all the other things. But what we can control are some things like our environments in our home, right? Our style, our clothes, our health, our fitness, our diets, our finances, our spiritual lives. There's been some things that are entrusted with us, and that's just a handful of them, right?
Yeah. We have found life just doesn't always go the way we think it should go. In fact, I was just on a trip and I was talking to a woman on this trip, and she was telling me her story. And her story is that she lost her husband in his early 30s to a tragic snowmobile accident, leaving her alone with 3 young kids at home. And my heart was breaking as she's telling me this story. And I'm thinking, wow, when stuff like this happens, this is what happens in life. Some of you know exactly what she feels like. Others, maybe it's not the exact situation, but something similar has happened, like that just leaves your life feeling completely decimated and devastated. And then you don't even know what to do from there. You're in shock. You're in disbelief. How did I end up here? How did my life turn out this way? The next thing you know, you're just spinning out of control. And when this happens, you really only have 2 choices. We say it all the time. You can get bitter or you can get better. And one of the ways that we get better is exactly what Megan just said. It's by choosing to control what we can control and let go of what we can't control. When Megan and I were walking through infertility, there was so much out of our control. I had to see my wife poked and prodded, and it just was so grueling at times. There were so many things outside of our control. But we decided, what can we do that's within our control?
We had to control something.
How do we get a win in our lives? And one thing we decided to do is we decided to start to get our finances in order. We'd always been decent with money, but what we wanted to do is we wanted to see if we could really excel in the area of personal finance. So we picked up a book by Dave Ramsey called Total Money Makeover. And what we did is we read this book together. He has 7 steps to financial success and personal finance. And we just started to walk through his 7 steps. And within 2 years, we were able to pay off $17,000 of student loan and car debt that we had been hanging on to for a long period of time. We just decided, let's create a budget. Let's clean up our finances. Let's pay down this debt. And when we paid down all of our debt and we had no debt other than our home, there was like this weight that lifted off of us.
100%.
And that's when we realized that there are things in our lives we can control. And when life is spinning out of control, when you can grab one of those things that's within your control and get a small win, you start to see hope for the future again and again.
Yeah, and it's not about being controlling, right? That's a very different thing. This is just about being a good steward of our lives and about what's been entrusted to us. I've told this story before, but in our previous home, we had a room that sat empty for years because that room was intended to be for our children.
Right.
And, we had the money, like Chris said, we had just gone through all of these financial steps. It wasn't a financial thing to redo this room. It was a grief thing. It was a choice to move forward thing. And if you've ever had to walk into a room in that kind of situation, you know the intention and the mindset and just what word am I looking for here? Just the bravery I think that it takes to courage, right? Yeah, it absolutely is. And I know many of you have experienced that, maybe for the same reason, maybe for different reasons, but it can be both a very painful and very purging experience, if that can be the right thing. I think it's very cathartic, right? I know I'll never forget the day I walked into that room. I put on worship music because I could not have done that without Jesus. And we just started stripping off the most hideous wallpaper you've ever seen in your life. I did not put it up. We inherited that wallpaper. It was nasty. Okay. We started pulling up this bright green carpet and just doing these things. And I was literally doing this, tears rolling down my face, but it was healing. And one step at a time, we completely overhauled that room. And then that room would eventually become our office and the place that we would work on what would become No Small Life. Yeah. It was just, we can just see the Lord in it now,
And of course it didn't stop there.
Oh, well,
Once that room was done, then we had to do the bathroom.
That's how house projects go, right?
And the kitchen had to be redone. So
we eventually kind of overhauled, I guess, the rest of the house. Because but the why is when we stepped back and looked at everything, we were like, who lives here? Like, we don't actually like any of this stuff. We had kind of constructed this for the life that we thought we were supposed to have.
Right.
And then when we stepped back and looked at it, we're like, I actually don't like this. We don't live this way. And so we started little by little redoing things. And that practical step gave us momentum. And what that does is we walked into our home, and this is just an example, but it felt energizing. Yeah. It felt like us, right? It didn't feel like defeating every time you walked in the door, right? We had peace. We were shocked at how much peace that gave us. And it was just that one step that we took, and we began to believe with that one step, okay, God, we're going to trust you with the things that only we can trust you with. But then what else can we control that's within our grasp, right? What else do you want us to try to gain some momentum in?
That's why Megan and I love the story of Nehemiah in the Bible. We're going to share a little bit because it's the perfect example of what we're talking about. This story is about devastation and ruin. A society, a culture, an entire people group, a nation decimated, devastated, left for dead, left to never return, taken from their homes. Right. But then it's also a story of beauty from those ashes. Absolutely. And I love this story because one person decided, I'm going to control what I can control, and I'm going to let go of what I can't. That person was Nehemiah. And just to give you a little background here to what's happening in this story is there was a king by the name of King Nebuchadnezzar. King Nebuchadnezzar he was the king of Babylon, and he went and he attacked the Israelites. He attacked Jerusalem, who lived in Jerusalem, right. And he completely destroyed their home. Yeah. He went into the city of Jerusalem. He brought his entire army. He set the place on fire. He murdered people. And what he ended up doing is he robbed the temple of a lot of wealth. He took all of their possessions, everything they worked so hard to build. He took it with him, and then he took the rest of the people, enslaved them. He took them back to Babylon with him and left Jerusalem completely empty, void, decimated, devastated, nothing left in there, no way to even survive in there anymore. And the truth is, that's heartbreaking. Yeah. That was heartbreaking for our entire nation. And it was heartbreaking for many reasons. One of the reasons it was heartbreaking was because it took them so long to get there.
Can you imagine?
If you knew how long it took them to get there,
Yeah.
I mean, if you read the Bible, you understand.
The process.
Yeah, but this group of people, they were enslaved in Egypt for 400 years. 400 years enslaved in Egypt, no land, no possessions, no nothing. God finally decides enough slavery's enough.
Right.
He sends a guy by the name of Moses to rescue them out of Egypt, lead them into what God was calling the promised land. On their way to the promised land, though, they had to wait 40 years, live in the desert, learn how to actually live as a people.
Right.
Learn how to get over a poverty mindset and actually understand that they have a provider in God. Then he brings them into the promised land. But to get to the promised land, they had to defeat many enemies along the way. Then they finally get into the land that God had prepared for them, like one of the best plots of land on the entire earth.
Right.
They get to that point. And they're standing there, they're enjoying it, and they're starting to build an economy. And they're saying, this is the first time we've had a place to call home that's actually ours. This is the first time we get to be with our own people and actually build a life together.
Right.
And as they were doing this, they established business and home and culture. They had a king, and they built a king's palace. And then they built a temple where they could worship God together. All of these things were happening. Everything was starting to come together. They built God this beautiful temple, had the Ark of the Covenant in there. It was just an amazing city. And from the time they left Egypt to about the present time after they built the temple to God, it was about 800 years. 800 years to establish themselves as a nation and as a kingdom, with enemies constantly trying to steal what they had. And finally they were there.
They thought they could just take a deep breath, right?
Yeah. And then King Nebuchadnezzar comes in, and he takes everything in a matter of days, breaks down 1,000 years of what it took to build. 1,000 years of history, of culture. And he takes it from them. And then he takes the people over to Babylon for 70 years. They're away from their home. 70 years people died away from their nation in a foreign land. 70 years. That's what devastation looks like.
Yeah.
That's like, hey, my life didn't go according to plan. I thought I'd live in the house I grew up in. I thought I'd be able to get a job in my own city. People with dreams and goals and plans for their future. Devastated in a matter of days. Talk about total annihilation, until one day, a guy by the name of Nehemiah. And what I love about Nehemiah is he wasn't a pastor. He wasn't a Christian leader. He wasn't this brave soldier. He was a cupbearer, which means he drank the king's wine before the king did to make sure it wasn't poisonous. That's nice job there. Hey, sign me up for that.
Are you going to die? Nope. Okay, you're good.
But what happened was, while Nehemiah was sipping that wine for the king, they began to build a relationship together.
Absolutely.
And the king began to trust him and trust him and trust him.
Yeah, it was obvious that he had this really close relationship with the king's name was Artaxerxes. And the king liked Nehemiah, right? Yeah. He trusted him. And then one day he looked at him, he's like, something is bothering you. What's going on? And so he asked Nehemiah that, and this is what Nehemiah said in Nehemiah 1:3. Said, the city where my ancestors are buried lies in ruins, and its gates have been destroyed by fire. He was grieved. And so the king asked him what he wanted. And what I love about the way that Nehemiah replied was that he was ready with an answer.
Yeah, it was.
He was prepared. Okay. Think about that for a second. It's just, I get really nerdy about this story. I love it. So Nehemiah 1:5 says this: if it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor in his sight, let him send me to the city in Judah where my ancestors are buried, so I can rebuild it.
Ooh,
Rebuild it. Come on, No Small Life. Let's rebuild it. Okay. And he said, so, and Nehemiah, think about this. Nehemiah wants to go to the city and rebuild it. Think about Nehemiah's life. Okay. He lives in the palace. He has a very comfortable life. He's worked in the king's, quarters. He's lived with luxury.
Yeah.
But something was bothering him, right? And he said, my people don't have a home. And he witnessed firsthand what living in a kingdom is supposed to look like. And he knew that's not what his people were living with.
Exactly.
Right? He wanted better for them. And so he wanted to build a home to return to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And get this, the king not only says he's going to go and fund the operation, but then he sends people with Nehemiah. That's amazing. He had such favor. The king's like, not only am I going to send you, but I'm going to bless you with some people. Let's go do that for you. That just shows you what kind of man of character that Nehemiah was. But I got to tell you, spoiler alert, if you haven't read Nehemiah, there was some opposition when he went to go rebuild the city, okay?
It wasn't a cakewalk.
It was not a cakewalk. And whenever you try to take control of an area of your life, there is going to be opposition, okay? In the comments, give me a high five, give me an amen if you felt that opposition, right? When you're like, hey, I'm going to do this thing, bam, right? The enemy hates when you start to get momentum in the area of your life.
It's true.
He just does. We don't have to be, I don't want to say that to discourage you. I want to say it to prepare you so that you're not shocked by it. So it's just like, oh, we expected this. This is nothing new. We can keep moving forward. There's going to be negative people who come at you and tell you that what you're doing is not going to work. Then you have to deal with the own lies that come in your head that you're going to be tempted by. And all these circumstances, what they're trying to do is keep you feeling small, defeated, and insignificant. But, friends, you don't have to give up or give in.
That's right.
We have another choice. You can rebuild your life, right? If we create a new vision, if we put a blueprint in place for that vision, and if we just keep on persevering through the valley, through the pain until we get there. Mm-hmm. And, just whether it's the pain of your past or a mistake, right? You can still rebuild a life you love. And tonight we're going to talk about how. How do we actually do that?
Well, one of the reasons why the Babylonians were able to overpower the Israelites was because the Israelites weren't following God's ways. Right. And he kind of lifted his protection because they weren't following his truth, his ways. They adapted to the culture around them, and they left themselves open for an attack. Yeah. And sometimes that happens with us. Yeah. Sometimes we do some things we know we shouldn't do, and it can devastate our own lives. We can be our own worst enemy. And all of a sudden now we've created this pain for other people in our lives, and we've got baggage that we have to deal with on our own. But sometimes it's not our fault. Sometimes other people are responsible for devastating our lives. And we're like, hey, we did everything right,
this
God.
Is so not fair, right?
Like I'm sure there were some of the Israelites in Jerusalem who said, God, but I was living right. I know they weren't, but I was. And I think some people feel like that. Maybe you feel like that at times. I was doing things right.
I don't deserve this.
I don't deserve this. And then bam, a person hurts you. A person you trusted hurts you. Or just something tragic happens out of the blue that leaves our life decimated and devastated and in ruins, just like Jerusalem was. So what do? How do we rebuild when this happens? How do we begin to rebuild our future? Well, number one, the first thing we've got to do is we got to get God involved.
Absolutely.
We've got to go to God
Yeah.
with this stuff. Number one thing that we can do, and it's what Nehemiah did.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing he did is he got on his face before God. And once the king said that he would let him go, he got on his face and he said, God, I am sorry. I repent.
Mm-hmm.
I want to do things right this time,
Yeah.
but we can't do this alone. I'm tired of trying to do it alone. I'm tired of our people trying to do it alone.
Right.
We need to get back to a place where we are dependent on you.
Absolutely.
And who you are.
Yeah.
And we need you to lead us.
Yes.
And we need you to guide
Yes.
us by your spirit
Yeah.
if we're going to do this.
Yeah.
And he got God involved. In fact, in Nehemiah 1:5-6, would you read that, Meg?
Sure. It says this. It says, this is his prayer. It says, Lord, the God of heaven, the great and awesome God who keeps his covenant of love with those who love him and keep his commandments. Let your ear be attentive and your eyes open to hear the prayer your servant is praying before you today and night for your servants, the people of Israel. I confess the sins we Israelites, including myself and my father's family, have committed against you.
So that's what he does. He gets God involved. He asks for forgiveness. And then he says, God, there's going to be people who come against me.
Yeah.
And see, whenever you start to move forward, whenever you say, that's it, enough is enough, I want to move forward, there's going to be obstacles in the way. There's going to be people who mock you. Yeah. There's going to be people who stand in your way. There's going to be all kinds of things that happen that come against you. All hell comes against you at some points in this story. Yeah. And what we got to remember is to keep moving forward. Yes. We got to remember to get God involved, to not try to do this on our own. Yeah. And that's what Nehemiah did. So the first thing we need to do is we need to pray and we need to get God involved in the situation. Yes. What's the second thing, Meg? What else are we doing?
The second thing is that we need to move forward and keep building.
Oh, I like that.
Move forward and keep building, okay? When we were walking through infertility, we knew that we needed to get some emotional healing. And so one of the things that we did was we sought a counselor. Chris went first, and then I went kicking and screaming after that. I did not want to do it. But eventually, you know, I lowered my pride, and I still see her today. She's a fantastic woman. I'm so grateful for her because one of the things that she said to us during that time, you guys, marked us forever. Forever. And we were having one of those seasons that we just, honestly, we just want to be all done.
All done.
All done. Like I wanted to tap out. Have you ever, you know what it's like, right? When you're just in the season and you're like, can I wake up from this nightmare? Can I just be done? I don't have the energy. I want my life back, right? We get to that point. And she looked me in the eye so tenderly and she said, you know, you won't be able to move on, but you can move forward. You can move forward. Wow. Right? I wanted to
insightful.
It's so insightful. But what I found to be so powerful and so true is that, think about it, the blood of Jesus isn't an eraser to our past. It's a redeemer of it.
Come on.
Right?
That's good.
What the Lord does is he loves to repurpose the pain of our past and then use that as a bedrock to help us rebuild a future that we love.
Yes.
You know, I could vamp on that forever. I won't. I'm going to keep going. And because we're going to go back to our boy Nehemiah, right? Because despite the pain and despite all the threats around him, he decided to keep moving forward too.
Yes.
And he said this. So we rebuilt the wall till all of it reached half its height. That's a lot of work when you're doing manual labor back in that century, okay? For the people worked with all their heart. They kept moving forward. So yeah, we can keep moving forward too. Maybe you're at a stage of life where the pain of your past is so tangibly real in your present right now that all you can do is it just feels like you're just kind of keeping your head above water. I've been there.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah.
Your season is going to change.
Yeah.
It's not going to feel like this forever. Keep showing up. Keep your head above water. Don't isolate yourself. You have community, you have people who love you, who will support you, who will push you up even farther out of that water. Keep going.
Yes.
Maybe tonight you find yourself becoming bitter just in your heart.
That happened to me for sure.
Okay. Yeah.
In that season.
In that season, we grieved very differently, right? And I think that's what you walked through. Maybe tonight you find yourself and you're just kind of in that victim mentality. You know, no one cares what I'm going through. Nobody sees me.
Yeah.
Or maybe you just know there's something within my control that I'm procrastinating on because I don't really want to do it, right? It's like that junk drawer that y'all have, right? It has menus in there, like takeout menus. We don't need takeout menus anymore. It's 2022, but you're just like, I don't want to deal with that right now. So maybe it's just time to take control of what we were intended to control and trust God with the things he was intended to control, to keep moving forward. Because I promise you that forward motion will give you momentum in the other areas of your life. So we need to get God involved, right? We need to keep moving forward. And the third point tonight is that we need to develop a practical strategy.
I love this one.
This is like, ooh, we get really fun about this one. We love it.
Yeah. That's why I love Nehemiah, because he didn't just pray.
Yeah.
He didn't just say, God, do something. He said, God, I'm going to ask you to go before me, but I'm not afraid to get my hands dirty. I'm going to roll up my sleeves. I'm going after this. I'm going to pull myself out of this rubble. I'm going back. I'm rebuilding a future that I love, and I don't care who's with me if I have to do it myself, but we're going to do it. I love that.
And it says it right here in this verse. It says, get this picture with me, would you? Okay, just brace yourself. It says, those who carried materials did their work with one hand and held a weapon in the other. And each of the builders wore his sword at his side as he worked. Come on.
Think about that picture in your mind. These guys, they want to rebuild a future for the next generation. They want to rebuild a life they love. They're trying to get back to their land. They're in there. They can see it. They can see we're back in Jerusalem. They're trying to repair the wall. And instead of that being enough, they had enemies trying to attack them and threaten to kill them during their mission. So they literally had a sword in one hand and a tool in the other. Come on, if that's not a picture of Christianity, if that's not a picture of rebuilding your life, of going through something hard and coming out better on the other side, you got the word of God, the sword in your one hand. You got your practical life. Like, I'm going to take my life in my hands, what I can control. It's a perfect picture.
It is.
Of this is what I can control, so I'm going to do this. But then God, this is your job. And this is what I'm going to give.
And it's both and.
To you.
It's both and, right? We can't, some people just want to say, well, I'm only just going to pray, but not do anything. I'm going to expect God to do everything. And then there are other people on the spectrum that I'm not going to get the Lord involved. This is just my job. It's both and. It's the sword in one hand and the tool in the other, baby.
Yeah, if you're going to overcome bitterness, pain in your own life, it's going to take praying and asking God to soften your heart and to lead you and go before you. It's going to take moving forward even when you don't feel like it. I remember waking up at times in my bed going, is this really my life now? I can't believe this is my life. And I know you can relate to this. And then there's time to say, that's it. Enough's enough. I'm taking control of what I can control and I'm moving forward with it. And that's why I love Nehemiah. He did that. He continued to go after his dream. He continued to go after his goal, and he wouldn't let an enemy, he wouldn't let lies, he wouldn't let other people try to keep him from what God had for him. He wouldn't let anyone keep him from feeling small or insignificant. He rose above those circumstances, and he kept moving forward with a strategic plan. We're building this wall with a sword in one hand and a tool in the other, and we're going forward. And That's what makes this message amazing.
Yeah.
For some of you, it's time to take a practical step in
Yeah.
your life. Maybe you've been praying. Maybe you've been seeking God. Maybe you're trying to move forward. But now it's time to take a practical step. What is in your control that you can move forward on? That's actually going to be our monthly challenge, is moving forward in one area of your life. For some of you, it's forgiving yourself. That's the practical step. Maybe you're the reason why your life is in ruins right now. And you need to say, you know what? I can't do anything about the past.
Right.
So I'm going to forgive myself and I'm going to move forward and rebuild a life you love. You do not have to punish yourself for the rest of your life. You get another shot. Our God is always redeeming our mistakes. You get another shot to have a joyful life. You didn't ruin it or mess it all up. It's not too late. For others of you, it's time to just get that passion for God's word back in your life. Like, hey, I'm going to read it every day. I'm going to get that passion for that sword. I'm going to put that in my hand again. I'm going to seek God again. I've let that go for so long and I feel so spiritually dry. That's going to be your practical step. For others of you, it's going to be uber practical. Like, hey, I'm going to try to pay off debt. I'm going to try to pay off this credit card bill that's been haunting me for a long time. I'm going to pay that student loan off that I've had around for 20 years. I'm going to get my finances in order. I'm going to actually create a budget and stick to it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to actually go to the gym that I have the membership at. Like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go there a few days a week and I'm going to work out. I'm going to eat healthier, make better choices. That is something, some of you, that's a practical step that some of us need to take today. Absolutely. And you will face opposition. Whenever you take a step, just so you know, you're going to face opposition. We give up because we don't see the results we want to see right away. Nehemiah could have done that. He could have given up several times in this process of rebuilding this wall, but he didn't. He kept moving forward through opposition, through hopelessness, through anxiety, through stress, through fear, through sadness, through depression. He kept moving forward with his practical plan in place. And they rebuilt that wall. Yeah, they did. They rebuilt it. Yeah, they did. And they started moving back in, didn't they? And, you know, when the enemy saw that Nehemiah was persevering despite their best threats, the enemy got afraid. Yeah. He got afraid. And Nehemiah, like Chris said, they rebuilt that wall and they started moving back into the land, into their God-given right to be in the land that the Lord gave them, right? And then they rededicated that land to the Lord. And some of you tonight, your step is just, it's time just to rededicate yourself to the Lord. You know, we get, guys, I get it. Like, it's easy just to get spinning in so many different directions. We're like, oh Lord, how in the world did I get here? Maybe that's time for you tonight just to concretely say, I'm going to rededicate myself to the Lord tonight. Maybe for you, it's just time to dedicate yourself to rebuilding your future that feels decimated and putting some practical steps in place to do that. So if you're going to rebuild your life, a life that you love, that's our whole thing here, right? We want to help you rebuild a life you love. Here is the practical steps that it's going to take. Ask God for help. Keep moving forward despite the opposition and develop a practical strategy. And if you can do this, you can rebuild your practical life despite your past. You definitely can.
You really can. So here we go. Chris kind of teased it out a little bit, but the monthly challenge is to pick one area of your life. One area, the thing that's been beaming on your radar the whole time that we're talking, and develop a strategic plan of attack, okay? Or to go about it. Maybe attack isn't the right word. We're talking Nehemiah. We're talking war, right?
We're talking battle, baby.
Battle. but develop a strategic plan for that practical area. And good news, y'all, we've got some ways to help. And throughout the next few weeks, we're going to be unpacking some really practical ways, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. So we've got some ways to help. Here we go.
Well, something that's super important is, and maybe you don't know about, is we do have a Facebook community that is designed for us to do things together.
Absolutely.
For us to try to move forward and rebuild a life we love together. If you want to join that group, I put the link in the show notes here below. You can go ahead and join the Facebook group and say, I need help.
Yeah.
I want to do this, but I don't know how. And we will help you. The community is there.
And it's all people that are in the same boat as you, maybe different circumstances, but we're all looking to rebuild this life that we can love.
Yeah, so you don't have to do it alone. There's a Facebook community. You can jump in there. You can subscribe here to this channel if you haven't done so yet. And what you will do is we send videos every single week. The rest of this month of March, there's 5 Thursdays. We're going to be sending videos out that help take a step in a certain area that might intrigue you.
A practical area. It's going to be all super practical. It's going to be so fun this month, you guys. I don't want you to miss it.
Yeah, because controlling what we can control gives freedom.
Yeah.
It gives hope.
It does.
And that's why this is one of our practical steps to rebuilding our lives.
Yes.
The other thing you can do is go to our website, nosmalllife.me. We have all kinds of resources there for free. We have a free ebook called Bitter to Better.
Yeah.
We have our email list. You can jump on and we send weekly emails. There's a blog. There's a bunch of resources we have absolutely for free to help you in this quest to rebuild your practical life.
Absolutely.
Rebuild a practical and meaningful life. So before we go, just want to say one last thing. No Small Life is a nonprofit organization. We run on the donations of people just like yourself. So if it's in your heart and you'd like to give, you can do so at nosmalllife.me/donate. And we'd love to partner with you to get this message out to as many people, because how many know? A lot of people in pain, a lot of people struggling, a lot of people need to hear that they can rebuild a life they love despite what their past looks like.
Absolutely.
So there you have it, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out tonight and spending your evening with us. We want to let you know one more time, your life is not small. You do not have to live it that way. Enjoy your week.
Bye, guys.
Have a good one.